Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Brent Willis from Voyageur Pharmaceuticals. And Brent, I'm really looking forward to this update today. Barium contrast, iodine contrast company from earth to the bottle. Let's get an update on how things are proceeding with Bayer.
Things are proceeding very well with Bear. We're just advancing to, we just completed our work plan with Bear, so they've approved it, and we're moving forward with getting the next tranche of $1 million to come in to fund the project. We set up our lab in Houston. It's fully operational. We are building our field unit to go out and test brine waters with the Mueller process. The construction of that trailer is a trailer mounted unit is scheduled to be completed by the end of August, and we'll be out testing in the field. That's going to allow Fluor Engineering to accumulate the data they require to scale up and complete our feasibility study for the project. And upon completion of feasibility, then Bayer will move forward with an offtake to fund the capex that Fluor creates off that feasibility. And we will be moving forward with building that whole project out to provide iodine pearl for Bayer to ship to their plant in Germany. And Voyageur will retain 20% of that production for our own use, where we can sell it at spot price. The current spot price for iodine is $74,000 a ton. So that will start generating revenue for us in the near term with Bayer projects. And we also use that 20% to feed into our iodine drug manufacturing facility, where we can begin producing iodine drugs from the Bayer project. And in parallel, we'll be moving forward building out our own iodine and barium manufacturing facility for iodine and barium contrast drugs. And we'll be deploying our own Mueller units out to the field to increase our production rates of producing iodine drugs through that facility.
So, we were talking at the beginning of Investor Talk about how when the world is looking at the demand for critical minerals, they don't necessarily think of the pharmaceutical industry and the impact that happens with these critical minerals with increasing geopolitical tensions. Can you explain that to our audience, why they should be looking at Voyageur Pharmaceuticals and why you're one of the most exciting supply chain solutions for the critical minerals market?
Certainly. So these minerals are, North America is 100% import dependent on these minerals, and these drugs that are manufactured from these minerals are, barium contrast is manufactured by Braco in Montreal. They originally they bought out a company called EZEM Canada, where they had their own mine in Brookfield, Nova Scotia. Since then, that mine has gone dry, and they had to pivot to synthetic source of barium sulfate. And so having our own barium resource that's pharmaceutical grade in the ground gives us a significant advantage in cost savings and supply chain security, and allows us to be the only producer of barium contrast in North America with our own source at very low costs and secure supply chain. And with iodines, we are 100% import dependent on iodine drugs into North America. Iodine is produced out of majorities out of Chile through their nitrate ore mining process, and roughly 20% or more comes out of Japan through oil field brine water. And there is some brine iodine production in the United States, but it's all being used for industrial uses. So we're looking at producing our own iodine with our technology. We call it the Mueller process, to extract iodine and create pharmaceutical grade iodine for Bayer, and also produce the pharmaceutical grade iodine for Voyageur to produce iodine drugs and build the first US-based radiology drug manufacturing facility, which will provide the United States with secure supply chain for these critical drugs that We saw some serious issues back in COVID, as an example. So when we looked at what happened in COVID on the iodine drug side, the United States lost 50% of their supply because GE had to shut a plant down in Shanghai, China. And when you look at that, losing 50% of your supply, that costs the lives of a lot of Americans by not being able to get their CT scans to diagnose whatever disease that they were fighting. And that's what we're trying to ensure never happens again, is that we secure an iodine supply in a market that's over $2 billion in the US to ensure that we are 100% isolated from the geopolitical issues that we're seeing around the world for drug supply in this segment of the drug industry.
We are so delighted by how you have been progressing Voyageur Pharmaceuticals forward for the shareholders. I don't usually ask CEOs to do this, but you have a wonderful slide, and this is a bit of a complicated story. Would you mind sharing your vertical integration slide, and can you just walk us through it, please?
Yeah, so what you see on the top is Voyageur's pharmaceutical plant that we plan to build, where we are bringing our concentrated ore from Francis Creek, shipping it down to a site in the US where we're going to build this facility. We'll process that barite into pharmaceutical grade barium API, which will go in and to our different product lines. So we have 5 Health Canada licensed barium contrast products. We're moving forward with the FDA currently. Expect to get FDA licensing potentially by Q2 of next year. And on the iodine side, we have our Mueller processing technology, where we can extract iodine from oil-filled brine waters and produce the iodine we need to produce our own drugs. On the bottom of that slide, you see that Bayer is the Bayer project, where we partner with Bayer. We're going to provide Bayer with iodine prill, and we're going to produce iodine prill for Bayer. They will finance the capex on that project, and we'll be allocated 20% of the production, which comes back to Voyageur, where we can sell it at spot price, which currently is at $74,000 a ton, and or use it to produce our own drugs. So that is our what we're moving forward with for our final feasibility study that'll be published by Q2 of 2027 potentially. We have Fluor Engineering working on that. So we're at a stage right now where we're moving forward with our final feasibility studies for the Francis Creek project, where we have a pre-feas coming out potentially in September. That's going to add some significant value for our shareholders. We're going to file a patent on what we call our streamline iodine drug process. So we have a new method of producing iodine drugs where we believe are going to cut the costs 50% lower than our competitors, which is going to give us a huge advantage on our marketing and market growth into the iodine space. And we're going to produce a pre-feas, internal pre-feas on that in the coming months after we file our streamlined patent. And we have our Bayer deal where we're going to be producing a final feasibility on that project as well. These final feasibility studies should all be published here within Q1, Q2 of 2027.
A quick question for you with regards to your vertical integration slide. In it, you have your contrast facilities, and you put a news release out about 4 weeks ago saying that you're evaluating 3 locations in the United States for these integrated iodine and barium contrast media manufacturing facilities. Can you tell us a little bit more about this process?
Yeah, what's going to determine where we set up will be, what benefits, who will give us the greatest benefits from these different communities we're talking to. Location to iodine resource. So we're starting this project by using produced waters from water disposal companies But longer term, we're looking at securing our own resource so that we're not dependent on third-party waters. As we saw in the past, the iodine producers in the US who are tied to water disposal companies, when the price of oil drops, then there's no production. And we don't want to be in a position where we can't secure resource. So longer term, we're going to end up with our own field that we're analyzing several areas. So there's several components on where we're going to pick our area of to set up our plant. So once we get all our water sampling program completed here, so we are sampling different areas, looking at different grades, looking at which water disposal companies are the best fit for us to work with, and who can supply us high grade for with high volumes. And so there's a lot of different aspects to look at prior to selecting that site, but we should have that all pinned down by Q4 this year.
Well, we certainly see an incredibly busy fall for everybody involved in Voyageur Pharmaceuticals. And for those of you interested in learning more, because there's a lot to follow in Voyageur Pharmaceuticals, please go to the following website. Thank you, Brent, for joining us today.
Thank you.